I'm super excited. I'm finally able to bring you a review of the Direnzo DRZ 02. This was, in my opinion, the best watch off of Kickstarter in 2018, running on Kickstarter in December 2018, and probably the best dress style microbrand watch that has been off of Kickstarter, period. And that's saying quite a lot because we have over 20 microbrands in the store, I believe, if I check right now, and or roundabouts 20 at least. And we obviously love all our brands. We wouldn't be carrying them otherwise, and we probably dealt with about 70 or 80 microbrands during the last 6 months alone. We don't carry every brand that we look at, even though we like quite a few of them. And there are hundreds of more microbrands that have come off of Kickstarter. So given the choice and the other wonderful dress watches out there, like the Arcturus LC1, that is saying quite a bit for me to say this is the best one. But I genuinely feel this is the best designed watch I've seen on Kickstarter in the last year or so, and probably the best dress watch I've seen, bar none, coming off of Kickstarter. And these watches, in my opinion, will hold their own with more expensive timepieces. If you have somebody who poo-poos microbrand watches and you're sitting down to dinner or attending an event or something and you're wearing one of these, I would not be ashamed to wear this at all. I mean, I wouldn't be ashamed to wear microbrand anyway, but people who sometimes think the only good watch is an expensive watch will be quite surprised for what you get. The value for money on this is just phenomenal. So let's talk about why I like these watches before we do anything else. But even before I get into that, let's just start with what you get in the package. So you get a watch box, of course, with the Direnzo logo on it. It is a cardboard box, but at least it stacks fairly flat for those of you who have a lot of microbrand watches at this point. And inside the box is a travel roll. Not the first microbrand to do that, but I particularly like this travel roll. First of all, it looks really sharp with a design. And it's a button down, one of two positions you can button it. But what I like about this is it sits flat even with the watches in it. Some of these will roll up and be kind of bulky if you're going to put them in a suitcase or a travel bag or maybe in your hand luggage. This one, it sits as flat as it looks. It doesn't really get any thicker than this. So it's a very good one to take with you if you want to take a couple of spare watches apart from the one on your wrist. You've got room for two watches there. You put the watch in the holes and the top of the straps through this. Room for a couple of tools or spare straps there. And whatever you want here, you could perhaps put some more straps or put, this is the warranty card, but you could put some paperwork, whatever you need to prove these are your watches when you go traveling. Because yes, sometimes you do get stopped at customs and they try and tax you on them. So it doesn't happen often, but it can happen. So obviously you're not wanting to see this, you're wanting to see the watch, but nice shout out for Direnzo for coming up with something like this. Really love the look of this. Also in the package, you get a nice thing to see is an instruction booklet. You don't usually get those with most microbrands. And a warranty card, a certificate card. The warranty is, on the card inside. And I guess this is my first negative. I like to give the pros and cons. And this is a really nitpicky minor negative, but it's worth sharing anyway. So as you can see, there's some smudgy fingerprint style marks on these. And I looked at 20 of these watches when we unboxed them. And 18 out of 20 had this or worse. You could actually see complete fingerprint impressions. Would have been great if I had some kind of a wanted to dust or somebody's fingerprints or something. Yeah, it's kind of like pretty extreme on a few of them. So I was very surprised that anything went out like this. The watches themselves are totally clean. Everything else is great. Direnzo could have reprinted this if they're all smudgy. It's like somebody had extremely black factory fingers and just put their kind of dirty paws all over everything pretty much. So it's a great pity in a way, because if you sell a watch and you sell something like, and you sell them this, the customer, the recipient, especially if we're a microbrand store, they're going to think we've kept the watches in a dirty environment. Not the case, guys. We keep the watches in the original boxes. We keep everything shrink wrapped as long as possible. So, yeah, it's a pity. So a minor negative, nitpicky, but be aware, if you're going to resell this watch onto someone else, they might also feel that you didn't take care of the paperwork very well. not the case. You can just point them at this video. So I guess this video does have some benefits apart from showing you the watch. So talking about the colors that we have available, we only have these 3 colors left. We've actually sold the vast majority since we've had them in the last week and a half or so. So we sold all our black PVD, those have gone. We've sold all of our black dialed watches. So we're left with the stainless steel case with the Sunburst Blue, Sunburst Green, and Sunburst Gray, which is an unusual one. We'll get into that in a second. And these are absolutely gorgeous watches. I mean, you can just see, just by looking at them, that things are a little bit different to the norm. I mean, if you start with the case, you've probably noticed the curves. It's kind of concave, so it curves inward on the sides, a really unique feature. Kind of reminds me of drinking from a kind of hip flask or something, where you sometimes get those really nice curves on a hip flask. So it's really well done. It's a mix of brushed, very finely brushed and polished edges. So you've got the top of the side and the bottom of the side of the case is very finely polished. And there's also a very thin polish ring around the side of the bezel, just at the top, and the rest of the bezel is brushed. So some very nice accents. And you can see the curves on this case, even curves down at the side. It's a very thin dress watch at 11 millimeters. So really super nice case design, a little bit unusual. I have the protective cover on the back of this one, but as you can see, it's a nice exhibition case back. The movement is decorated, but not overly done, which is kind of in line with the overall aesthetic of the watch. It's nice and sharp, not too blingy, but very nice decorations that make it a little bit nicer than a plainer finish. So I really like the aesthetic of the case and the case back, but the real, I guess, well, you know, points that really make this stand out are the dial. I mean, the dial is obviously a beautiful sunburst. It's a deep dish shape, which you probably don't pick up on too well from the camera here, but a lovely dish-shaped dial. But you know, the design is just so unusual. It's so unique, yet it's not weird or way out there. The kind of aesthetic of this watch is supposed to be retro-futuristic. So that kind of makes sense when you understand the inspiration behind this is, you can guess it's a vehicle from the rally straps, is a Bugatti, which is a 1930s car with a lot of futuristic curves at the time. So you can pick up these curves in the case. And even the indices, the very unique design on the indices on this sandwich dial here, reminds me of a gear stick on a car, you know, the different gear positions you move into. So, you know, first gear, second gear, third gear, that kind of a thing. So it's really got a lot of tie-ins there, but this watches also have a huge amount of thought put into them. There's so many features that I keep noticing with this watch when I wear one. I have this one here as my personal watch. And you just look at, it's just like curves within curves. You've got the circular bezel, you've got the circular design inside the indices, you've got the circles at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock for the loom on the sandwich. You've even got a circular cutout, which is really nicely color-matched background just above the 6 o'clock circle. And then you see this circle on the second hand. It's going to pass right over the center of the date. I mean, it's just perfectly done. And then even then you're not done. It even lines up with the circle on the logo. So really nice. If it didn't look like it was straight, that's probably because I'm holding either the watch or the camera at an angle. But really nicely done. Huge amount of thought has gone into these watches. So definitely love these watches. I could talk about the watches for like an hour and say wonderful things about them. You're going to probably fall asleep. So let's carry on and be a little bit more objective if I can. Talk about other features of these watches that might not be so obvious. So let's talk about the loom. I haven't seen too many loom shots for all 3 of these choices. So obviously they're all going to be slightly different, which is refreshing. The hands on, well, first of all, the loom throughout is Swiss Superluminova, which is an extremely good loom. Tritech Swiss Superluminova. The hands, all 3 hands on all 3 watches are going to be BGW9 color, which is a blue loom. And I'll put up a shot of this one here first for you, which is the Sunburst Gray. and it has a yellow loom, kind of a touch of orange in it, which really goes well with the overall Sunburst Gray look on this. And it's probably the most contrasted dial, so you have blue foreground and gray background. Really well done, very strong loom, looks really wonderful. So definitely that is one of my favorite looms out of these three. And then the other two are not exactly what you would expect. This one in the middle is the green one, has a green loom, it doesn't light up cream or white. And this one is old radium loom, which is kind of a creamy look to it in the daylight, kind of an off-white, maybe a pearl look you might consider. To me, it looks kind of more of a cream color. And this is a very nice, strong green loom at night. And that contrasts also quite well with the blue hands. The one on the blue is not BGW9 for the background. They also wanted to keep the contrast. So the loom color here, despite the cyan color during daylight, is also a green loom. And I'm putting up two pictures now. The one on the left is for the blue sunburst, and the one on the right is for the green sunburst. And you can see that the blue sunburst slightly softer, not quite so strong as the green sunburst in terms of the loom on the indices. The green color loom is not quite as strong. And I did test several watches just to make sure this was the case. And probably the contrast is not quite as good as the one on the green sunburst. So it's just a matter of personal preference. I think all three are great. I think as far as sunburst goes, the gray is the winner. If you want to have an unusual watch and you've got a number of watches that are blue or green, having a gray sunburst is an unusual color combination. I also don't get to see a yellow loom too often. And this is a more conservative color that will go well with a suit. So definitely one to look out for. I think if you enjoy sunbursts, however, this one can white out a little bit in strong sunlight. And make the dial look almost white or steel colored. The way that the sunburst works doesn't show so well in indoor lighting here, but you can probably guess if that radiant sunburst was a little bit stronger. So it can white out a little bit, but in indoor lighting, such as in an office or something, really nice conservative design, unusual colors, definitely one to consider. And then the other two are probably my personal favorites. Obviously, I already own one of these green ones here. And the sunburst on this is very much like a Seiko Alpinist, SARB017. In daylight, it's actually a little bit lighter, and it's a very soft green, kind of a little bit metallic, so it works really nicely. And the sunburst blue, everyone loves the sunburst blue. Probably this is the best of all three of the sunbursts. And the blue color also matches very well in daylight, the cyan with the dark blue. It almost becomes a third blue, if you like. So I think, as far as daylight looks go, it's kind of a toss-up between whether you want a green or a blue, really. I think they're both equally good. But these will be my personal taste, I guess. So keep that in mind when making your choice. All three are excellent choices. In terms of straps, 22mm lug width, everything's pretty standard. And if you're going to get an aftermarket strap, do keep in mind that the lug sides are fairly straight here, so you won't be able to use a curved bracelet if you're going to consider a bracelet. So you want something like this. This is a probably like a $20 strap from Watch Gecko or Gekota. And I like the combination of the brushed and polished finishes because it kind of goes well with the brushed and polished finishes on the sides of the case. So something like this works really well. I was actually wearing one of these the other day. I went back to the rally strap because the rally strap is very well done and I like that, but I'll probably end up putting one of these on a bracelet again in the future. So plenty of aftermarket straps out there, or a strap of your choice. Talking about the other dimensions and features, the height on these is only 11mm, so nice and thin as you'd want with a dress watch. And even then it kind of sits a little bit thinner on your wrist because this tends to sink in at the base a little bit. So it will look even thinner than the 11mm it is. So it looks very good on a wrist. And this is a close-up picture and it still looks fairly thin in my opinion. So imagine that on a suit or something, no problem fitting with a sleeve cuff in a formal setting. definitely a nice dress watch, and that's one of the considerations you need to keep in mind for a dress watch. However, it is a 50 meter water rating, so you can actually, have fun with it. If you change the strap, quick release pins here, put on a different strap. You could definitely even splash around with it if you need to sit by the pool or something. Some light swimming, something like that would be okay. It's not a screw down crown, but it's a 50 meter water rating, means you can do that. Though I tend to stay out the water with 50 meter watches. Not going to have to worry about giving these a little bit of a wash or something like that if you need to do that. So lovely watches, 41 millimeter diameter. Let's talk about that a little bit. I have a 7.5-inch wrist, which is exactly average for a man. 41 millimeters is usually a bit too small for you, but it looks a little bit bigger. It wears a little bit bigger. The lug-to-lug length is only 48 millimeters, so you can actually wear this on a wrist that's an inch smaller than mine. So I'm 7.5 inches, that's 19 centimeters. You could wear this on a 6.5-inch wrist or larger. It will look good if you have a large wrist. It will look good with a medium-sized wrist, and it will fit fine, I think, in terms of 6.5 inches, but I wouldn't go less than that. And here we're going to hit the first negative, I guess, that's not necessarily so minor. And this one only affects people who have 6.5 to 7-inch wrists. I'm wearing this default stock strap on the second to tightest hole. There's one more hole after that you might be able to pick up on. And it fits super well. It's loose enough. If I force it up, you can see it's got some room, but it's sitting snugly. So it's loose but comfortable, not going to move around. This is how I would wear it all the time, pretty much. 7.5 inches, that second to last hole is perfect, which means you've got an 8-inch, 8.5-inch wrist. You're going to be fine with this strap. 7-inch wrist, you're probably going to be fine as well, 1/2 inch smaller than mine, because there's one more hole there that can be a little bit tighter than the one I'm using. My issue or my concern, if you're a 6.5-inch wrist, this does fit, but the existing holes will probably make this stock strap a little too loose. So you either have to get an aftermarket strap, which is not a bad option really, or you could, if you're adventurous, probably get another hole punched in there with the appropriate tool, which is probably the same price as the aftermarket strap. So I'll leave that choice up to you, but just be aware. I do like to mention negatives as well as positives. The only other negative I have with this design, and it's a minor one, it's an aesthetic. If you look at this watch from a slight angle, the hands look as if they're the same color as the case, and you might be forgiven for thinking that these are brushed hands or stainless steel finish. In fact, they're painted hands, and I'm not sure as to the reason why. But when you look at the hands dead on front, they tend to look white, and I find that rather sad, I think, because I would have liked to have seen a brushed finish to match the brushed finish on the case. That's my personal taste. I know it put one other person off as well. And the photograph that you see, or the photographs that you see on the Kickstarter campaign that were real photographs, did show that these were painted, and you can see that from some of the other reviews that have been done. But the renders looked like they were brushed. They were more reflective. So in terms of, a stainless steel finish. So be aware, it's more of an FYI than anything else. These hands are painted, not a stainless steel finish. And as you can see, this is beginning to look a little bit white, kind of head on. Whereas this one at a slight angle here looks a little bit more like the case color. So, it's not anything that's too off-putting for me. I still love this watch. I still love the design. There may be a practical reason for that, maybe more higher contrast from a functional perspective. I just think that's a shame in terms of finishing, because everything else on this watch is finished so beautifully. It's a really nice watch. Obviously, it has a Swiss movement, being Swiss-made. It's a Swiss Solita SW200. Which is a high beat movement, which is what you want in a dress watch. So very smooth second-hand sweep, 28,800 beats per hour, which is 8 ticks per second, or 8 beats per second, I should say. It hacks, it hand winds, and it has a typical power reserve of 38 hours. So, a nice entry-level mechanical Swiss movement that's automatic. and exactly what you're going to be looking, which keeps the price point on these watches down to about $700 full retail. Obviously, it was much less on Kickstarter, but we're way beyond Kickstarter at this point. So a good price, in my opinion, considering only 400 of these were made. And that's not 400 per colorway. That's actually 400 all colors combined. So if you think about that, 4 colors, some were PVD, some were stainless steel finish. That's 8 colorways. That's probably roughly 50 per color. So there's not a high number of these made. I think these are going to become highly sought after over time. I keep thinking back to the Arcturus LC1, which was another Microbrand dress watch. They did fairly well, but as soon as people started seeing pictures of these, their friends bought them and shared them in Watch of the Day pictures on Facebook or Instagram posts, that kind of thing. Everyone else wanted them and they sold out and you just could not get hold of them. This is what's happening here. We only have a couple left in these 3 colors. We don't have the black color. We don't have the PVD. We sold out the vast majority. We've only had them a week and a half. One guy bought 3 of them the other day, literally just a day or 2 ago. So these are going fast. I think we're the only place left with the date window on the green right now. But you can shop on the Microbrand Store. You can shop at Direnzo's site. If there's a particular color combination you want, you might be able to find some on our site. They're not in Direnzo or vice versa. So do check them both out. It's a lovely watch and definitely one that I could thoroughly recommend. And I can't really sing its praises high enough. This is my favorite watch that I've received in the last year, and I've received some beautiful watches, guys. And thanks for watching. Take care.